Life, a show about Jewish people and the books we read. I'm Heidi Estrin. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries. In this October 2007 episode of our podcast, we celebrate classic Jewish books for children. Perhaps the most beloved of these classics is the All of a Kind Family series by Sydney Taylor. We'll speak to Sydney's daughter, Jo Taylor Marshall, about the books and about the real-life people behind the stories. Author Michelle Edwards brings us good news about her picture book Chicken Man coming back into print. And we'll hear from an editor, a librarian, and some young readers who share a love for Marilyn Hirsch's The Rabbi and the 29 Witches. So, settle into your overstuffed armchair and get ready to revisit the classics. The All-of-a-Kind family books are warm household stories about 5 sisters growing up on the Lower East Side at the turn of the last century. They were instant classics and helped to create the genre of Jewish children's literature that is thriving today. Although All-of-a-Kind author Sydney Taylor passed away in 1978, her daughter, Jo Taylor Marshall, keeps the legacy alive by answering her mom's fan mail and by funding the Sydney Taylor Book Award and Manuscript Award. We spoke to Jo at her winter home in Hillsborough Beach, Florida. Jo, how did your mother, Sydney Taylor, come to write the All-of-a-Kind family books?
I think she wanted to provide me with a sense of background and a sense of the cultural history and also the idea of living in a large family. I grew up an only child, and so she would tell me these stories, and my father urged her to write them down. So she did, and then stuck them in a drawer under her underwear or something and forgot about them. And my father, he saw this big article about a new award, and they were looking for something new in children's literature. So unbeknownst to my mom, he fished out these stories and sent them to Wilcox and Follett, and next thing you know, she gets a letter saying, "Congratulations, you have won our award, and we're giving you $3,000 in publishing your book." Well, she didn't even know where this came from or what they were talking about, but when it was explained to her, she got so excited she called her mother, my grandmother, and said, "Mama, guess what? You're going to be immortal. They're publishing my book." Well, of course, Grandma just wanted to know how much money she got. But that was the start of my mother's writing career. She had many incarnations of careers. She was in Martha Graham's company as a modern dancer. Way back when they were still sort of throwing eggs and tomatoes at Martha, not understanding modern dance very well. She also was an actress. She studied with Marino, the psychodrama guru, really. She has also written many, many plays with original music that she directed and produced at Camp Sedgwin, which was the Jewish camp in those days, run by the Central Jewish Institute. And my mother taught dance and drama there and put on many of these plays. So she was really quite a writer. And I think that she had a whole new horizon open up with the publication of the Wilcox and Follett book. Then she decided she was going to go full steam ahead and have the family grow up. Her original goal was to write a book about each one of the 5 girls. She only got as far as Ella before her death. There were actually 3 boys. There were 8 children. There was Irving, Ralph, and Jerry. Jerry is the sole survivor today of the Brenner family. He's a live wire, but all the others have since passed on.
Tell us a little bit more about the stories.
Well, they're all true. Mama hiding the buttons so that they would dust. Time Henny got lost on the beach and ended up in the police and didn't want to leave because she was being treated so well. Ella's dating of the young man. I'm sure she took some poetic license and embellished them, but I think that's part of the charm of the book, that they are so real.
Is there a favorite incident that you can remember from within the stories?
I love the stories about Henny because Henny was Henny to the very end. She was spunky, she was mischievous, she was difficult. Somehow I could see her as she was growing up, knowing her much later in life and saying, my God, this is the same little girl who's rebellious. She was spunky.
When the first book in the series was published in 1951, was it unusual to have a mainstream children's book about a Jewish family?
Oh, it was probably the first book of its kind. And that was what was so interesting. The people at Wilcox and Follett wanted her to tone down some of the Jewishness. In some of the books she talks about the Jewish holidays. They kind of wanted her to put in an American, quote-unquote, holiday. So they do celebrate the 4th of July. And that's how that came about. But my mother was pretty firm in her principles. She was not going to compromise. But on the other hand, they were fascinated by the Jewish element of it. It was very different, and it was a really groundbreaking experience, I think, in the publishing world.
There's a Jewish Book Award named after your mother, the Sidney Taylor Book Award, and you are actually the sponsor of this award. How do you think the award lines up to the legacy of Olive Kind family?
I think it's perfect. It makes the books live. It makes Jewish traditions live. I'm just very proud that my father endowed the award and that I was able to continue that. And as you know, we've expanded it now into the teen category. And I'm so excited. I have on my bookshelf all the award winners. It's incredible to me. I wish my mother were only alive to see out of her simple little tale has come these wonderful reverberations. And I know she would be thrilled.
Jo Taylor Marshall, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Well, thank you, Heidi Estrin. It was a pleasure. I love talking with you. And I hope somehow Mom is smiling down at me from up there saying, go, 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 Jo. And thank you again.
Thank you. Michelle Edwards is a popular author of Jewish and secular books, including the Jackson Friends series. In Jewish circles, perhaps her best beloved title is the picture book Chicken Man, about Rody, who loves all of his work assignments on the kibbutz, but loves taking care of the chickens best. We are delighted to report that Chicken Man is coming back into print in January 2008, reissued by New South Books. We spoke to Michelle by phone at her home in Iowa. Michelle, tell us about Chicken Man.
Well, Chicken Man was the first story that I actually wrote. It comes from my experience of living in Israel on a kibbutz. I had a friend on the kibbutz who worked in the chicken house. And this was a chicken coop, by the way, that had 4 stories. And he used to come back at night and tell me what a great place the chicken coop was to work and how much fun it was. And he had a little story about each one of the chickens. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a great place to work. And so when he left the kibbutz, I begged for this job. And after about 5 minutes in the chicken coop, I realized that the chicken coop was a terrible place to work. The chickens were noisy, they pecked at you. I realized my friend was a great storyteller. That was the beginning of Chicken Man. It gave me the idea for it, about how stories can transform what your real experience is.
There's a happy ending when Chicken Man can stop switching jobs and work permanently with the chickens in the book. But he seems to bring joy to every job he tries. What's the underlying message of the story?
Well, I think that is the underlying message of the story. You know, not only was my friend a great storyteller, but that he could see the stories and he could see the fun where I couldn't. And that's a very, very special gift, and it's one that I've tried to acquire myself, and I think it's one worth trying to put it as an example for children. That there are special parts to almost everything that we do.
Is the kibbutz setting a key to the story, or could this story happen anywhere?
A character like Chicken Man could appear anywhere. But the kibbutz setting is the only place I could envision this story, because first it took place there, and second, because when I was on the kibbutz, I was on Kibbutz Mizraim, I was so taken with the whole communal idea, changing work jobs, the manual labor, the children being raised by a community, that was something that I really wanted to share. The setting was just something that was very, very important to me. I guess there could be a character who changed jobs in life, but the kibbutz was just an excellent place to have and a wonderful way to showcase what an incredible experiment in community that was. Still is, for that matter.
Chicken Man was first published in 1991, and it won the 1992 National Jewish Book Award. It's been out of print for how long?
I think it's been out of print about 12, 14 years.
And tell us how it ended up back in print.
It ended up back in print because it always had a following. There were a lot of people who felt strongly about Chicken Man, and specifically now the Green Spoon Foundation, who felt that Chicken Man presented a kind of positive outlook on Israel without being didactic and just showed sort of a slice of life. And in many ways, I think that is why Chicken Man originally went out of print. I think a lot of people didn't know what to do with the book. And I think now Jewish books have evolved to a point where people understand that Jewish books don't have to be Danny and David celebrating Hanukkah, and it doesn't have to be an Eastern European book. It can be a book that deals with the state of Israel in a way that Chicken Man does, or with a Jewish identity. I mean, Chicken Man doesn't wear a Star of David or a kippah, and he doesn't talk about Shabbat, but he lives a Jewish life within a Jewish state. I approached New South, small publishing company, and asked them if they might like to do Chicken Man, and they were very excited.
Now, what inspired you to approach them? How did you know it was time to take action and bring Chicken Man back?
I had been trying with major publishers for a long time at the urging of these foundations. Everyone remembered the book fondly and liked reading it, but no one wanted to republish it because it's very hard to reprint a book. You don't get reviews on reprints, and that makes it hard for a book to find its way.
Why do you think it's so hard to keep even popular award-winning books like Chicken Man in print?
Well, I've thought about that a lot because I worry about what happens to certain books. In fact, to the point when I read a book that I really like, I make sure that I purchase it right away because I'm afraid that it'll go out of print and I won't have access to it. And I think the bar has been raised in children's books. The great thing about Harry Potter is it got a lot of people reading, and the bad thing is it raised the expectations of the publishers to what a successful children's book should look like. And I think it has narrowed the landscape of children's books. That's why it's very important for everyone to try and support your authors and books that are worthy.
Do you have any new Jewish books planned?
Well, I keep seeing Anna Ticho, the Israeli artist, in my mind, and she's waving to me, and she's telling me that she wants her story written. And I've been working on a little picture book about Anna Ticho. So, yes, that and a story that I have about Jerusalem. And it may be that those two books get put together into one.
Michelle Edwards, thanks so much for speaking with us, and Mazel Tov on getting Chicken Man back in print.
Thank you, Heidi, and to all people who have been good supporters of Chicken Man throughout, and I appreciate your support, and I look forward to knowing that this book is going into the next generation's hands.
The Rabbi and the 29 Witches by Marilyn Hirsch was one of my own childhood favorites. A shtetl is terrorized by the witches who appear at every full moon until the rabbi and 29 brave men trick the witches with the offer of a feast and a dance. The men waltz the witches out into the rain, where they promptly melt away, leaving the townsfolk to enjoy the beauty of the full moon in peace. Marilyn Hirsch passed away in 1988, but her editor, Marjorie Kyler, has joined us to reminisce about the book. Marjorie reports that publisher Marshall Cavendish is considering bringing The Rabbi and the 29 Witches back into print as part of their new classics line. Email your support or suggest other titles to bring back by emailing mmark@marshallcavendish.com.
Marjorie, The Rabbi and the 29 Witches by Marilyn Hirsch was first published back in 1976. Can you tell us a little bit about how it came to be?
Yes. I was working at Holiday House at the time. I was editor-in-chief. I met Marilyn very early on. She proposed this idea over lunch. She had a strong storytelling voice. I think voice is really critical because it's what distinguishes each writer. And a lot of charm. In those days, it was pretty normal to have books that were just in 2 or 3 colors because the artists had to go through this laborious process of doing color separations. Nowadays, with modern technology, artists can just draw full color, beautiful paintings or illustrations. But in those days, you had to layer the color, and each layer was a different color so that when the camera finally shot the art, all the layers would be combined. And Marilyn didn't want to have to go through doing, 4 layers or 5 layers. And so because there's so much rain in the story, it just seemed natural for her to just do one blue layer beyond the black. And I think it was very effective because her black line was so strong.
Can you remember any particular stumbling blocks or triumphs associated with publishing this book?
Triumphs? I remember we thought it would have a very limited audience because it was a Jewish folktale and we weren't sure we would sell many copies beyond the Judaica audience. But in fact, Scholastic Book Club for kindergarten and first graders took a great interest in this book and bought the rights to publish the book as a paperback book club selection, and it turned out to be their #1 seller. So I think what's wonderful about this book and what surprised us was that it reached way beyond the Jewish market and really reached into the hearts of all children who responded so strongly to the story itself. I think they loved the witches. I think they loved the idea that the witches finally melted in the rain. Maybe it reminded them a little bit of Wizard of Oz and all the dancing and all the wonderful dialogue. I mean, it's just a terrific book.
Tell us about the author, Marilyn Hirsch. What was she like?
Oh, she was very funny. She loved to tell stories. She was always telling wonderful stories about her childhood. She absolutely loved illustrating even more than writing. As a person, she was very interesting. She was absolutely crazy about the country of India. So when you went to her apartment, she and her husband, Jim, had decorated it from top to toe with Indian artifacts. So you almost felt like you were entering another country. And yet she also had this great love for Judaica and Jewish folklore. But you didn't see that evidenced in her apartment. It was completely saturated with Indian art, Indian bedspreads on the walls, Indian carved tables, Indian brass cookware. She died of cancer, and the last few years of her life were difficult, and she never complained. She embraced this difficult situation with tremendous courage, and that impressed me. She was really inspiring.
Now, your publishing house, Marshall Cavendish, is hoping to bring The Rabbi and the 29 Witches back into print. Why did they decide to do this?
We want to start a new line of books called Marshall Cavendish Classics. What is a classic? What defines a classic? It's something that you don't forget. It's something that lasts in your memory for a long time, and something that's elegant and has integrity, and something that really should never have gone out of print in the first place. Mm-hmm. I bumped into a really nice woman who had worked on the Sidney Taylor Awards, and I asked her if she could recommend some Judaica classics. And she said that she got so many requests for The Rabbi and the 29 Witches, and people were always clamoring to see it back in print. The challenge is that a lot of the books that are classics were published before digital technology, and therefore there are no digital files. And often there's no artwork because it's been sold or it's disappeared. And in addition, the author and illustrator haven't always gotten their rights back from the original publisher. We can't reissue a book unless the rights have reverted. So there are a lot of challenges in launching this program.
And why did Marshall Cavendish decide to create a classics line?
Oh, I think because of my age.
So you decided.
I'm in my late 50s now, so I remember all these great books from the 70s and 80s and 90s when I was first in publishing. And so many of them are out of print now that it's kind of discouraging because I feel kids are missing a whole body of work that they should be exposed to. And there's just not a big demand for the classics because a lot of the new parents don't necessarily know about them. And that's what's so sad. And that's why I'm such a supporter of libraries, because I feel libraries have always done a wonderful, wonderful job of connecting the public with really good literature.
Marjorie Cuyler, thanks so much for speaking with us.
It was a pleasure.
The children of Peninsula Temple Shalom selected The Rabbi and the 29 Witches as the winner of the Reader's Choice Book Award last year. Librarian Tasha Bergson-Michelson and two of her students called in to share their enthusiasm for the book.
Hi, this is Tasha Bergson-Michelson. I'm the children's librarian at Peninsula Temple Shalom in Burlingame, California.
I am Eric, and I am in first grade. My name is Olivia, and I am in grade 3.
Last year, we had our first annual Reader's Choice Book Award. We actually had about 20 kids volunteer. We asked each of them to pick 10 books that looked interesting to them from the library. And then I picked 10 books. So we sent 20 books home with them. We selected 5 nominees.
I read Something from Nothing, The Chicken Man, Rabbi, and the 29 Witches, The Most Magnificent Mosque, and Only One Club.
And in the end, we had close to 100% of the kids in kindergarten through 3rd grade read the books. And then everyone voted. And Rabbi and the 29 Witches was the hands-down winner.
It's a really, really good story, and I would recommend it to other people. It's about an old lady who wants to see the moon before she dies. Every full moon, these very mean witches will come out and make everything horrible. Nobody could sleep. She gets her wish by telling the rabbi, I really want to see the moon, so can you try to do something? He gets 29 of the Ravens men to come, and they trick them into shrinking them. He told them, I'll teach you how to walk through the raindrops. But then when he took the witches outside, they got wet and they started to shrink until they were as small as an ant.
The Rabbi and the 29 Witches, I could tell from the beginning, appealed to their sense of ghoulishness, and the kids really, really enjoyed it. I told them that it was actually my favorite book when I was in kindergarten and religious school. I just think it's a timeless story that kids respond to across the ages. I was worried that the kids would not respond to the lack of color, the kind of old look of the book, and they didn't mind at all. Even some of the editions we have are these tiny little, they look like the books that come in cereal boxes these days. And the kids still just responded so viscerally to this book.
Do you think other kids should read it? I do. It's a very, very fun book, and other kids should read it. It's a really good book.
The kids were excited by it, and I've been getting questions about what we're going to be doing this year. So who knows what we'll win this year. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Computers and libraries, take a look. Use the O-Pack to find a book.
Feldman Library, the home base of the Book of Life, will be holding a library blogathon on Wednesday, November 21st. I'll spend that day posting library-related goodies sponsored by the library lovers here at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton. Please post a comment on the blog to show our locals that you share their love of Jewish books. Share the love at cbiboca.blogspot.com. And thanks to Brian Smith at laughinglibrarian.com for this great song, Computers in Libraries. More fun songs from the Laughing Librarians Bib Ditties selection will be included in the blogathon on November 21st. Just visit cbiboca.blogspot.com.
Ebooks, audio, MP3, databases, search for free.
We love hearing from you, and in our November show, we'll be reading some of your messages to thank you for your support. Email bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com, post a comment on our website, or if your computer has a microphone, leave a 2-minute voice message by clicking on the voicemail link on our website at jewishbooks.blogspot.com. The Book of Life is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries, tending the Tree of Knowledge and promoting Jewish reading by supporting Judaic libraries and librarians. Visit them on the web at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band from Sacramento, California, whose CDs feature upbeat music from Ashkenazic and Sephardic traditions with Brazilian, Gypsy, and Celtic influences. Borrow their CDs at the Feldman Library or buy your own copies at freilachmakers.com. To download episodes of the Book of Life podcast, visit us on the web at jewishbooks.blogspot.com. That's jewishbooks, one word, .blogspot.com. Links to the books and CDs mentioned on the show are available on this website. You can also hear the latest episode by phone. Just call 916-313-3820. Thanks for listening, and happy reading!